Today I'll show you how I managed to blend machine knitting and hand crocheting to create nice hats. It's a nice touch when you would like to make part of your project portable because the knitting machine doesn't fit very well into a person's purse. This is part of my 100 recycled hats challenge to myself. I rewound yarn from unused samples and am trying to repurpose it into hats. The goal is 100. There was the introductory video. We've already had the honey bunny hat pattern, and now we're going to move on to the finishing hats with crochet. Although these are all recycled yarns, I can tell you that they are basically the yarns that are scrolling past you because those are the ones that I always prefer and use for the samples. These are all what we used to call worsted weight yarn in the United States, and now the standard definition is number 4 or medium weight yarn. Most of the time we crochet this yarn with an eye, also known as 5.5 millimeter hook. What has worked best for me to create nice hat hems is to work the first row, the one that goes into the knitting or around the cast on, using an H or 5 millimeter hook, and then switch to the 5.5 or I hook. These hats start with a simple knitted strip. While I gather mine off, let's talk about hat sizing. All of these yarns knit at about 4 stitches 6 rows per inch. Head circumference ranges from 12 inches in circumference for very small newborns to 22 inches in circumference for large men. Some sources say 23 inches in circumference. I've never actually run into a gentleman with a head 23 inches around. So your number of stitches is very easy to figure. Let's take a lady with a head 21 inches in circumference. She needs 4 stitches for every one of those inches, which comes up to 84 stitches. Most methods of seaming take an entire stitch along each edge of the fabric. So we add 2, and we would cast on 86 stitches for this woman. To make hat sizing even more fun, some people, like me, prefer 0 ease. I want it to measure what my head measures. Other people like up to 2 inches of negative ease. So if the lady in question is one of those, we'd only use 78 stitches. Either way, I usually begin by E-wrapping the correct number of needles, then knitting the desired length, and then gathering off as I am now. The desirable length for hats, of course, varies somewhat with taste, but in general, 4 inches for the very tiniest newborn hats, moving quickly up to 5 inches for most babies, 6 and 7 inches for most children, 8 inches for most ladies, 9 inches for most men. That's measuring from the very top of the crown at the center, where we're gathering now, to the bottom of the hem. But we want at least an inch of crocheting. So we would knit a length of stockinette fabric 1 inch shorter than the desired hat. In the case of me and most ladies, I want an 8-inch tall hat, so I would knit 7 inches of stockinette. 7 inches of desired length times 6 rows per inch would mean that my hat should be 42 rows long. This is a very simple way to size simple hats, and you can adjust it to the precise gauge that you're getting and to every single person. When the knitting is complete, leave a long yarn tail, thread it into a yarn needle, and gather off the stitches as I'm doing now. Pull the yarn tail to gather in the crown and stitch across the gathered area a couple times for security, and that completes the very simple crown. Now use the remainder of the yarn tail to seam the edges of the work together, and then we'll be ready to add our crocheting. Since I cast on an E-wrap, I'm going to crochet around the E-wraps. Now knit stitches and crochet stitches are not the same size as one another, so the pace that I've found that works the best for me is to crochet a single crochet around the first 2 E-wraps and then work a decrease over the next 2. So we're reducing the number of stitches from the number that was originally present in the knitting to the number that's suitable for the crocheting. And remember, right now we're working with one size smaller of hook than you would usually use for the majority of a crocheted project with this yarn. Once you are all the way around, the fabric will certainly be rolling still. At this point, I find that 2 more rows of single crochet are necessary to make a really nice not rolling edge. You can see that the second round is already helping. I don't find that it matters very much whether you turn and crochet the second round from the inside of the hat or keep going from the outside, but I do prefer the effect of increasing to the normal size of hook for the yarn in use. You may also crochet into live stitches if you prefer. I'll cover that in more detail in an upcoming video on strip knitting these recycled hats. The crocheting may also be used to make up for a shortfall of yarn. Here I ran out of the medium blue before I really wanted to. So after my first round of single crochet, and that's always what I use to join to the knitting, I'm working 2 rounds of half double crochet, which of course makes a longer hem. There's no rule that the hem has to be limited to 1 inch, but less than 1 inch doesn't seem as effective. My favorite basic hem is 3 rounds of single crochet with the first round containing decreases, followed by a final row of slip stitch to make the edge a little bit beefier. For those who are new to crocheting, slip stitch is just chain stitched, worked into the previous row. Note that the stitches on the right are complete and the edge looks more solid. The stitches on the left have yet to be made, but the 2 areas are the same length. You don't have to do it my way. If you're a good crocheter, you already know 2 different ways to make crocheted ribbing, and they may be used. And you can use alternate stitches or crochet little scallops, all kinds of nice things. But my basic way will get the job done and is suitable even if you're not a very experienced crocheter. That's 1 round of single crochet worked into either the knitting or the cast on or the bind off. The pace that works for me is 2 single crochets worked into 2 successive knit stitches or the bound off or cast on areas that correspond to those stitches, followed by 1 decrease that combines 2 knit stitches. That first round with the reduced sized hook, then change to the main size hook, work 2 more rounds of single crochet and 1 round of slip stitch. Then fasten off, weave in the end, snip the tail. There's no need to make all of your hats just alike. These all have little differences. Some were worked alternating faces of the hat, inside versus outside. One was worked going into the stitches from the inside of the hat, one from the outside, some from working around the cast on, one from the final row of stitches rather than the first row of stitches. I single crocheted into the back loop only once to create a little ridge, and I used half double crochet on one. This is a good opportunity to practice a variety of techniques. Have fun with it.